Picture this, friends. Arizona Territory, 1873. The autumn wind cuts through pine trees like a knife through butter, and there's a man riding alone through those mountains, Everett McAllister. Now, Everett's not your typical cowboy. This man's got more money than most folks see in 10 lifetimes. Silver mines made him rich, real rich. But money can't buy back what he lost. 5 years ago, fever took his wife Anna and their boy Timothy. Just swept through their ranch house like wildfire. 1 week they were laughing at the dinner table. The next week, Everett was standing over 2 fresh graves, wondering why God let him live. Since then, he's been a ghost walking among the living. Sure, he still owns the biggest ranch in 3 counties, still pays the preacher's salary and fixes the school roof when it leaks. But he don't talk to nobody, don't smile, don't even come to town except when he has to. His ranch hands whisper that he's gone strange, spends his days riding alone in the high country, talking to trees and shadows, maybe talking to Anna, maybe just talking to the wind. This particular morning, frost covers everything like sugar on a cake. Everett's horse picks its way careful-like through the forest. The silence is so thick you could cut it with a spoon. That's when he hears it. A sound that don't belong, soft, desperate, like a wounded animal trying not to cry. He dismounts, pulls his rifle. These mountains got bears, got wolves, got things that'll kill a man just for looking at them wrong. But when he pushes through the cedar branches, what he finds ain't no animal. It's a girl. Can't be more than 17. Native American by the look of her, half buried in frost and dead leaves, shaking like a leaf in a tornado. Her lips are moving, whispering something in Apache. Her eyes flutter open for just a second, dark as midnight, scared as a cornered deer. Then she goes limp. Now, most white men in 1873 Arizona would have turned around and rode away. Relations between settlers and Apache tribes are tenser than a fiddle string. But Everett ain't most men. When you've lost everything that matters, you start seeing people different. You start seeing souls instead of skin color. He wraps her in his coat, lifts her onto his horse and rides hard for home. The girl's breathing is shallow, her skin's cold as winter stone. Every few minutes she mumbles something in her native tongue. Sounds like she's calling for someone. Maybe her mama, maybe the spirits of her ancestors. Everett don't know it yet, but he's just made the most important decision of his life. Because this ain't just any Apache girl he's rescued. This is Ayana, which means eternal blossom in her language. And she's the daughter of Chief Nalnish, leader of the most feared Apache band in all of Arizona. But that's getting ahead of ourselves, ain't it? Would you have stopped to help a stranger in those dangerous times? Let me know in the comments below. I'm curious what you'd say. For 2 days, that girl burns with fever in Everett's guest room. He don't sleep a wink, just sits by her bedside, putting cool cloths on her forehead and trying to get water down her throat. His housekeeper, Maria, shakes her head and mutters prayers in Spanish. "Senor Everett," she says, "this is dangerous. What if someone sees?" But Everett don't care about danger. Something about this girl reminds him of his own boy, when Timothy had the scarlet fever. The way she tosses and turns, the way she calls out for people who ain't there. On the second night, her fever breaks. She opens her eyes, those deep dark eyes, and stares right at him. No fear now, just curiosity, like she's trying to figure out if he's real or just another fever dream. "Water," she whispers in English. Her voice is rough as sandpaper but sweet as honey. He brings her a cup. She drinks slow, never taking her eyes off his face. "Why?" she asks. "Why what?" "Why did you help me?" Everett thinks about that. It's a fair question. He could lie, say it was Christian duty or common decency. But this girl's got eyes that see straight through to a man's soul. "Because," he says finally, "I know what it's like to be alone." She studies his face for a long moment. Then she nods like she understands more than she's letting on. Over the next few days, she gets stronger, starts eating Maria's cornbread and venison stew, walks around the house on unsteady legs, touching things like she's never seen furniture before. She don't talk much, but she watches everything. Smart as a whip, this girl. Everett learns her name is Ayana. She won't say much about her family or where she came from, just that she was traveling and got lost in a storm. But he catches her staring east toward the mountains, with a look in her eyes that speaks of homesickness and worry. One evening, he's reading by the fireplace. Shakespeare, Hamlet to be exact. He don't realize she's listening until she speaks up. "What's that about?" "A prince whose father was murdered. He spends the whole play trying to figure out what to do about it." "Does he?" "Eventually, but it costs him everything." Ayana is quiet for a long while. Then she says, "Some people spend their whole lives trying to do the right thing, and it still costs them everything." The way she says it makes Everett look up from his book. There's old pain in her voice, pain that don't belong in someone so young. That night he finds a small carved figure by his bedside, a woman holding a child. The craftsmanship is beautiful, delicate and detailed. When he asks Ayana about it the next morning, she just shrugs. My grandmother taught me to carve. She said wood remembers the tree it came from. Sometimes you got to help it remember what it wants to be. Subscribe to our channel Frontier Hearts to listen to more beautiful stories like this one. But what Everett don't know is that 20 miles east in a hidden canyon, Chief Nalnish paces outside his lodge like a caged mountain lion. His daughter has been missing for a week. His warriors have found tracks, her tracks, leading toward white man's territory. And mixed in with those tracks are the hoofprints of bounty hunters. Do you think Ayana should tell Everett the truth about who she is? Share your thoughts below. Now friends, let me tell you about Chief Nalnish. This ain't no Hollywood Indian chief with feathers and war paint. This is a man who's watched his people get pushed from their ancestral lands, seen his warriors killed for sport, watched white soldiers burn sacred sites just because they could. He's also a father, and his daughter, his precious Ayana, has been missing for 8 days. In the hidden canyon where his people make their winter camp, Nalnish calls his war council. 12 of his finest warriors sit in a circle around the fire. Their faces are grim as death. The tracks lead to the white settlements, says Yazzie, his best scout. 3 men on horseback followed her, bounty hunters by the look of their horses. Old Hostine, the medicine man, shakes his head. She was carrying the message from the eastern tribes, the proof of what the soldiers did to the sacred springs. That message could prevent a war, or start one. Ayana had been returning from a secret meeting with Apache leaders from 3 different bands. They were planning to take their grievances to the territorial governor to prove that Colonel Blake's cavalry had been deliberately targeting sacred sites and water sources. But without Ayana and that proof, the other chiefs are getting restless. They want blood for blood. "Give me 50 warriors," says Key, Nalnish's youngest war leader. "We'll ride into White Mesa and tear it apart until we find her." "And then what?" Nalnish's voice is quiet, but it carries the weight of absolute authority. "Kill every white man, woman and child? Bring the whole U.S. Army down on our heads? They took our daughter!" "We don't know that." But even as he says it, Nalnish's heart is breaking. His wife died giving birth to Ayana. That girl is all he's got left of the woman he loved. Meanwhile, back at the McAllister ranch, Ayana is struggling with her own secrets. Every day she stays, she's putting this kind white man in danger. But every day she stays, she also feels a little more human, a little less like a hunted animal. She helps Maria in the kitchen, learns to make biscuits, listens to Everett read in the evenings. Sometimes he reads poetry. Sometimes he reads newspaper stories about the outside world. Always, he reads like the words matter, like they're not just marks on paper, but living things. One afternoon, she's exploring the house while Everett's out checking on his cattle. In his bedroom, she finds a trunk. Inside are children's drawings, stick figures of a family, a dog, a house with smoke coming from the chimney. There are letters, too, tied with a blue ribbon. Letters from Anna to Everett, written before they were married. "My dearest love," one letter says, "I dreamed last night that we were old together, sitting on the porch watching our grandchildren play. Is it foolish to want such simple things?" Ayana's eyes fill with tears. She understands now why this man lives like a ghost, why he rides alone in the mountains, why he rescued a stranger without asking questions. He's already lost his family once. He ain't about to lose another soul if he can help it. That evening, she finds him by the corral, brushing down his horse. "I saw the pictures," she says quietly. He don't look up. "Figured you might, eventually." "I'm sorry." "Not your fault." "No, but I'm still sorry." She pauses. "They looked happy in the drawings." "They were." His voice is rough as gravel. Timothy could make Anna laugh until she cried. She could make him eat his vegetables by telling stories about brave carrots and heroic peas. They stand in comfortable silence for a while. Then Ayana says, "My mother died when I was born. My father used to tell me stories about her, how she could sing birds down from the trees, how she could make medicine from plants that would cure anything. You miss her?" "Every day, even though I never knew her." That's when Everett looks at her, really looks at her, and he sees something that makes his blood run cold. Around her neck, hidden beneath her shirt, is a silver medallion. He's seen that medallion before, in wanted posters and military reports. It's the mark of Chief Nalnish's family. But what should terrify him, what ought to send him running for the sheriff, just makes him sad. Because he realizes this girl ain't just running from bounty hunters or bad weather. She's running from a war that's about to start. And he's the only thing standing between her and the men who want to use her as a weapon. What would you do if you discovered your house guest was the daughter of your supposed enemy? Let me know in the comments. Now, friends, you got to understand something about small frontier towns. They're like a pot of water on a hot stove. Everything bubbles up to the surface eventually, and word about Everett's house guest is starting to bubble. It starts innocent enough. His ranch hand Miguel mentions to his wife that Senor Everett's got a visitor. She tells her sister, who tells the preacher's wife, who tells the ladies' auxiliary. By the time the story makes its third round, Everett McAllister is harboring a dangerous Apache warrior who's probably planning to scalp everyone in their sleep. Sheriff Tom Bradley comes riding out to the ranch on a Tuesday morning. Tom's a good man, fair-minded and steady. He's known Everett for 15 years, ever since he was just a deputy trying to keep the peace in a wild mining town. "Everett," he says, dismounting slow and easy, "we need to talk." Ayana is hanging laundry when she sees the sheriff arrive. Quick as lightning, she slips into the house and up to her room, but she can hear every word through the thin walls. "Folks in town are worried," Tom says. "They're saying you got an Apache girl living here." "I got a guest," Everett replies. His voice is calm as still water. "Young lady who was near froze to death. Christian thing to do was help her. I ain't questioning your motives, Everett, but these are dangerous times. Colonel Blake's been stirring folks up talking about Apache raids and such. People are scared." Colonel Blake. Now there's a name that makes decent folks nervous. Harrison Blake came to Arizona Territory after the war between the states, bringing with him all the worst ideas about how to handle the Indian problem. He's got the territorial governor's ear and the federal government's backing. More importantly, he's got a personal grudge against any Apache who won't bow down and move to the reservation. "Blake's a fool and a bully," Everett says. "Always has been. Maybe so, but he's a fool with authority. And he's been asking questions about missing Apache in the area." Upstairs, Ayana's heart starts pounding. Missing Apache, they're looking for her specifically. "Tom," Everett says, "I appreciate you riding out here to warn me, but I ain't done nothing wrong. Girl needed help, I helped her. End of story." "It ain't that simple, and you know it." Tom's voice is heavy with worry. "Everett, I've known you since you were just another prospector with dirt under his fingernails. You're one of the good ones. But if Blake decides you're harboring a hostile, there ain't much I can do to protect you." After the sheriff leaves, Everett finds Ayana sitting on her bed, staring out the window toward the mountains. "You heard," he says. She nods. "I should go." "Where?" "Home, back to my people." "And then what? This Colonel Blake sounds like the kind of man who'd follow you there, start a fight just to prove a point." Ayana is quiet for a long moment. Then she reaches into her shirt and pulls out that silver medallion. It catches the afternoon light, gleaming like a star. "My father is Chief Nalnish," she says simply. Everett don't say nothing for a long time, just looks at the medallion, then at her face, then back at the medallion. "Well," he says finally, "that explains a few things. You're not afraid?" "Honey, I buried my wife and son 5 years ago, lost everything that ever mattered to me. You think I'm going to be scared of your daddy?" Despite everything, Ayana smiles. "He's not that scary unless you cross him." "I ain't planning to cross nobody, just trying to do right by a girl who needed help." That evening, they're sitting by the fire when they hear horses approaching. Lots of horses. Everett reaches for his rifle, but Ayana puts a hand on his arm. "Wait," she whispers. Through the window, they can see torches. A dozen men on horseback, led by a tall figure in a military coat. Colonel Blake has come calling. "Everett McAllister." Blake's voice carries across the yard like a bullwhip crack. "We know you got an Apache in there. Send her out and we might not burn this place to the ground." Ayana starts to stand, but Everett pushes her back down. "Stay here." "I won't let you." "This is my house, my land, and my choice." His voice is quiet but firm as bedrock. "Stay here." Do you think Everett should hand Ayana over to save himself? Or is he right to protect her? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to subscribe to Frontier Hearts for more tales from the Old West. Everett walks out onto his front porch, rifle in hand but pointed at the ground. The torchlight flickers across his face, making him look older than his 45 years. But his voice is steady as a rock. "Colonel Blake, bit late for a social call, ain't it?" Blake sits tall in his saddle, playing the part of the righteous lawman. Behind him are 11 men, some soldiers, some civilian bounty hunters, all armed to the teeth. They're trying to look intimidating, but mostly they just look nervous. Nobody wants to pick a fight with the richest man in 3 counties. "Cut the pleasantries, McAllister. We tracked an Apache girl to your property. She's wanted for questioning in connection with raids on federal property." "What raids would those be?" "That's classified military information." Everett's jaw tightens. "So you want me to hand over a guest based on classified information I ain't allowed to hear?" I want you to stop harboring enemies of the United States. Far as I know, hospitality ain't a crime yet. Blake signals to two of his men. They dismount, hands on their guns. We're going to search your house, McAllister. You can cooperate or we can do this the hard way. You got a warrant? I got federal authority. That ain't the same thing. Inside the house, Ayanna is pressed against the wall by the front window, listening to every word. Her heart is hammering so hard, she's sure everyone can hear it. She knows what Blake is really after, not just her, but the evidence she carries. Proof that his soldiers have been deliberately destroying Apache sacred sites, poisoning water sources, breaking every treaty that was ever signed. Without that proof, the other Apache leaders will assume she's dead. They'll declare war. Hundreds of people, white and Apache both, will die. She touches the small leather pouch hidden in her dress. Inside are photographs, written testimonies, even a signed confession from one of Blake's own soldiers who grew sick of the killing. It's enough to end Blake's career and prevent a war, but only if she lives to deliver it. Outside, the tension is thick enough to cut with a knife. Everett's ranch hands have emerged from the bunkhouse, armed and ready. Miguel stands to Everett's right, his old cavalry saber gleaming in the torchlight. These men have worked for Everett for years. They know he's fair, generous, and loyal. They'll fight for him if it comes to that. Last chance, McAllister, Blake says. Hand over the girl or face the consequences. What consequences would those be? Harboring enemy combatants is treason. Penalty's death. Everett actually laughs. Enemy combatants? Colonel, the girl I'm sheltering can't weigh more than 100 pounds soaking wet. She's been sick as a dog for a week. What kind of war are you fighting where that counts as a dangerous enemy? The kind where every Apache is a potential threat, including the children? If necessary. The yard goes dead quiet for a moment. Even Blake's own men shift uncomfortably in their saddles. There's something about threatening children that makes decent men take a step back. That's when Ayanna makes her decision. She walks out onto the porch, hands raised but head held high. In the torchlight, she looks impossibly young and impossibly brave. I'm here, she says simply. Blake's face lights up with triumph. Well, well, the little princess decides to show herself. Leave these people alone, I'm the one you want. That you are, Blake signals to his men. Take her. But as the soldiers move forward, something unexpected happens. Miguel steps in front of Ayanna, saber drawn. Then Maria appears from the kitchen holding a shotgun. Then the other ranch hands form a line. You want her, Miguel says in his thick Spanish accent. You go through us first. Blake's face turns red as a beet. This is treason, I'll have you all hanged. For protecting a guest? Everett's voice cuts through the night like a blade. For showing hospitality to someone in need? If that's treason, Colonel, then I guess we're all traitors here. The standoff stretches for what feels like hours, but is probably only minutes. Blake's men are outnumbered and they know it. Worse, they're starting to realize they might be on the wrong side of this fight. Finally, Blake raises his hand. We'll be back with proper federal marshals and a full company of soldiers. When we return, anyone standing in our way will be considered an enemy of the United States. As the horses thunder away into the night, Ayanna sinks down onto the porch steps, shaking. Why? She asks. Why did you do that? Everett sits down beside her. Because it was right. It might get you killed. Might. But I've been dead inside for 5 years anyway. Least this way I die for something that matters. Maria brings them both cups of coffee, her hands trembling slightly. Senor Everett, what do we do now? Now? Now we figure out how to get this young lady home safe before Blake comes back with an army. But getting Ayanna home safe is going to be harder than anyone realizes. Because 20 miles east, Chief Nalnish has finally run out of patience. What would you have done in Everett's place? Let me know in the comments, and remember to subscribe to Frontier Hearts for more stories from the Old West. In the hidden canyon that serves as the winter camp for Chief Nalnish's people, the war drums are beating. Not the Hollywood version you might imagine. These drums speak in the ancient rhythm of Apache tradition, calling the warriors to council, calling the spirits to witness what comes next. Nalnish stands before his people, and his heart is heavy as stone. For 8 days his daughter has been missing. For 8 days his scouts have found nothing but cold trails and empty promises from the white settlements. My brothers, he says, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd, we have waited long enough. My daughter carried proof of the white soldiers' crimes against our sacred places. Without her testimony, the other tribes will not join us in peace talks. Without peace talks, there will be war. Old Hosteen, the medicine man, steps forward. His face is painted with the symbols of sorrow and determination. The signs are clear, my chief. The eagle flew east 3 days ago and has not returned. The waters in the sacred spring run red with clay. The spirits are preparing for blood. Young Key, barely 20 but already a respected warrior, raises his lance. Let me lead 50 men to White Mesa. We'll find Ayana or burn the town trying. But Nalnish is not just a war chief. He's a father, and he's a leader who's seen too much death already. If we attack the town, innocent people will die. White women and children who have done nothing wrong. They have done nothing to help either, says Yazzie the scout. Their silence makes them complicit. It's an old argument, one that's been raging in Apache camps for generations. How do you fight an enemy who hides behind the innocent? How do you make war on a people without becoming the monster they say you are? There is another way, says a voice from the shadows. Everyone turns. It's Nalnish's sister, Desba. She's a woman of 40 winters, scarred by smallpox and hardened by loss, but her mind is sharp as obsidian. Speak, sister, Nalnish says. We do not attack the town, we surround it, silently, like wolves in winter. We make them see us without striking. We make them fear us without harming them. Fear makes men reveal their secrets. It's a bold strategy, risky, but it might work without the massive bloodshed that a direct attack would bring. How long do we wait? Asks Key. Until we find Ayana, or until they force our hand. As the council breaks up and the warriors begin to prepare, Nalnish climbs to the highest point in the canyon. Here, where the wind carries messages from the 4 directions, he speaks to his dead wife. Eidsil, he whispers, guide our daughter home. I have tried to raise her as you would have wanted, strong but not cruel, brave but not foolish. If the white men have harmed her, I will burn their world to ash. But if there is still hope, show me the path to peace. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of distant pine trees and something else, something that smells like hope. Meanwhile, back at the McAllister ranch, Everett is facing his own impossible choices. Blake will be back with reinforcements, probably within a day or two. When he returns, he'll have enough men to overwhelm any resistance. I know these mountains better than anyone, Everett tells Ayana as they sit by the dying fire. I can get you home, but once I do, there's no coming back. Blake will make sure of that. What do you mean? I mean he'll burn this place to the ground and make sure I hang for treason, assuming his men don't just shoot me on sight. Ayana stares into the flames. Then don't come with me, just point me in the right direction and… No, Everett's voice is firm. You'd never make it alone. Blake's got men watching the trails, and your people don't know you're coming. They might shoot you themselves, thinking you're leading soldiers to their camp. So what do we do? Everett pulls out a detailed map of the territory, hand-drawn from his years of riding these mountains. There's an old mining trail that runs along the eastern ridge. It's dangerous, narrow, lots of loose rock, but it's the one route Blake won't expect. If we can make it to the high passes, we can signal your people from there. Signal how? Apache smoke signals. Your father will recognize them even if he don't recognize me. Ayana looks at him with surprise. You know our smoke talk? Picked up a few things over the years. Had some Apache friends before the trouble started. Good people, honest people. They spend the rest of the night planning the route and gathering supplies. Maria packs enough food for 3 days. Miguel checks Everett's rifle and pistol, making sure everything's clean and loaded. The other ranch hands take turns standing watch, but the night passes quietly, too quietly. At dawn, as they're preparing to leave, one of the hands comes running from the ridge above the ranch. Senor Everett, he shouts, you need to see this. They climb to the lookout point and peer through Everett's field glasses. What they see makes Ayana's heart leap and Everett's blood run cold. Apache warriors, dozens of them, positioned on every hill and ridge for miles around. They're not attacking, not moving, just watching, waiting. My people, Ayana whispers. They've come looking for me, but they're not the only ones who've arrived during the night. From the south comes a dust cloud that can only mean one thing. Colonel Blake is returning with his reinforcements. The McAllister Ranch is about to become the center of the most dangerous standoff in Arizona Territory history. Do you think Nalnish is making the right choice by surrounding the town, or should he trust that his daughter is safe? Share your thoughts below. Picture this, friends. Dawn breaking over the Arizona high country, and 3 different groups of armed men all staring at each other across a valley that's about to run red with blood. Unless somebody does something smart real quick. From the south, Colonel Blake approaches with 40 federal soldiers and a dozen civilian volunteers. From the east, Chief Nalnish's warriors have taken positions on every ridge and hilltop, and in the middle sits the McAllister Ranch, with Everett and Ayana caught between 2 armies that want to tear each other apart. Blake's force makes camp about half a mile from the ranch house, just out of rifle range but close enough to make their presence felt. Through his field glasses, Everett can see the colonel pacing back and forth like a caged wolf, pointing at the hills where Apache warriors sit their horses in perfect silence. "He's spooked," Everett tells Ayanna. "Blake expected to ride in here with his chest puffed out and find me cowering. Instead, he finds himself outnumbered and surrounded. My father is smart," Ayanna says with quiet pride. "He knows this ground, every rock, every tree, every place where a man might hide." As if summoned by her words, a lone Apache rider appears on the ridge directly above the ranch. Even at this distance, there's no mistaking the proud bearing, the decorated war lance, the silver ornaments that catch the morning sun. "Chief Nalnish," Everett breathes. Father and daughter stare at each other across a quarter-mile of dangerous ground. Nalnish raises his lance once, a gesture that could mean anything: greeting, warning, promise, or threat. Ayanna's eyes fill with tears. "He came for me." "Of course he did. You're his daughter." Down in Blake's camp, there's a flurry of activity. Soldiers are setting up artillery pieces, small mountain howitzers that can reach the Apache positions. Blake's planning to blast the warriors off their perches, and he don't much care if the ranch house gets caught in the crossfire. That's when Sheriff Tom Bradley comes riding hard from town, his horse lathered with sweat and his face gray with worry. "Everett," he calls out as he approaches the ranch house, "thank God you're still alive." "For now," Everett replies grimly. "What's the situation in town?" "Bad. Real bad. Blake's got federal authority to use any force necessary to secure the territory. That includes artillery bombardment of suspected Apache positions." "He's going to shell the hills?" "Starting at noon unless the Apache withdraw peacefully." Ayanna makes a sound like a wounded animal. "He'll kill them all. My people, they won't retreat. They'll die where they stand before they abandon me." "And Blake knows it," Everett says. "He's counting on it. Start a massacre, then blame it on Apache aggression." Sheriff Bradley dismounts, his face grave. "There's more. Governor's office sent word. Any white settlers who aid or comfort Apache forces during this standoff will be considered enemy combatants. That includes you, Everett." "Let me guess. Blake's interpretation of aid and comfort is pretty broad. Broad enough to justify hanging you and burning this place to the ground." The three of them stand there in the morning sun, watching two armies prepare for a war that nobody really wants, but everybody seems powerless to stop. That's when Ayanna does something that surprises them all. She walks to the edge of the porch and starts singing. It's an Apache song, high and clear and haunting. The melody rises and falls like wind through canyon walls. She's singing in her native language, but you don't need to understand the words to feel the emotion behind them. Up on the ridge, Chief Nalnish straightens in his saddle. Down in Blake's camp, soldiers stop what they're doing and turn to listen. Even the horses seem to pay attention. When the song ends, the silence that follows is different somehow, deeper, more thoughtful. "What was that?" Everett asks quietly. "Her song my mother used to sing, about a daughter who was lost and found and the price of bringing her home safely." "What's the price?" "Truth." Before anyone can ask what she means, there's a commotion from Blake's camp. A rider is approaching under a flag of truce. Not one of Blake's men, but a civilian. As he gets closer, Everett recognizes him. "Well, I'll be damned. That's Judge Hawthorne from Prescott." Judge Samuel Hawthorne is a rare thing in Arizona territory, an honest politician. He's got jurisdiction over federal territorial matters, which means he outranks Blake in everything except military operations. "This could change everything," Sheriff Bradley says hopefully. But Everett's not so sure. Blake's the kind of man who shoots first and worries about jurisdictional niceties later, and with 40 soldiers at his back, he might just decide that Judge Hawthorne's authority doesn't extend to active military situations. As Hawthorne rides closer to the ranch house, Ayanna reaches into her dress and pulls out that small leather pouch she's been hiding. "The truth," she says again, holding it up to the light. "Everything Blake has done, all the proof we need to stop this war before it starts." But getting that proof to Judge Hawthorne is going to be the trick, because Blake's men are watching every move, and they've got orders to shoot anyone who tries to interfere with their mission. Do you think Judge Hawthorne can stop this standoff peacefully? Or is it too late to avoid bloodshed? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Judge Samuel Hawthorne is 60 years old, white-haired and built like a scarecrow, but he's got more backbone than men half his age and twice his size. He rides right up to the McAllister ranch house like he's arriving for Sunday dinner, completely ignoring the 40 soldiers behind him and the Apache warriors on the hills around him. "Everett," he says, tipping his hat. "Sheriff Bradley, Miss Ayanna," she says quietly. "Miss Ayanna, I'm Judge Hawthorne, and I'm here to prevent what looks like it could become a very ugly situation." From Blake's camp comes a shouted command. "Judge, you're in violation of military security protocols. Return to designated safe zone immediately. Hawthorne doesn't even turn around. Colonel Blake, he calls back, I appreciate your concern for my safety, but I'm conducting official territorial business. Unless you're planning to arrest a federal judge, I suggest you let me do my job. Blake's face turns red as a ripe tomato, but he can't argue with federal authority. Not directly, anyway. Now then, Hawthorne says, dismounting with the careful movements of a man who spent too many years in the saddle, somebody want to explain to me why half the Apache nation is sitting on those hills, and why Colonel Blake thinks the solution involves artillery. Everett looks at Ayanna, who nods slightly. It's time for the truth. Judge, this young lady is Chief Nalnish's daughter. She was carrying evidence of illegal military actions against Apache sacred sites. Colonel Blake wants to silence her before that evidence reaches you. What kind of evidence? Ayanna pulls out the leather pouch, her hands shaking slightly. Photographs, written testimonies, proof that Colonel Blake's men have been poisoning water sources and destroying sacred burial grounds in violation of federal treaties. Hawthorne's bushy eyebrows shoot up toward his hairline. That's a serious accusation, young lady. It's a serious crime, Your Honor. Blake must have heard enough of the conversation, because suddenly he's riding toward them at full gallop, a squad of soldiers behind him. Judge Hawthorne, he shouts. That woman is a known Apache agitator. Any evidence she claims to have is fabricated terrorist propaganda. Colonel, Hawthorne says mildly, I'll be the judge of what constitutes valid evidence. Not in a military situation, you won't. I have federal authority to what? Massacre civilians without trial? Shell American citizens because you don't like their house guests? The two men square off like roosters in a barnyard, and for a moment it looks like things might turn ugly, right there on Everett's front porch. But that's when something remarkable happens. A single Apache warrior rides down from the hills, approaching slowly with his hands visible and empty. It's Chief Nalnish himself, and he's coming alone. Every soldier in Blake's command raises his rifle. Every Apache warrior on the surrounding hills does the same. The air crackles with tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. But Nalnish rides calmly through the crossfire zone, his eyes fixed on his daughter's face. When he reaches the ranch house, he dismounts and walks toward Ayanna. My daughter, he says in perfect English, you are safe. Father. She runs to him, and for a moment they're just a parent and child reunited after a terrible separation. Blake's hand moves toward his sidearm. Nobody move. Chief Nalnish, you're under arrest for what? Judge Hawthorne's voice cuts through the morning air like a whip crack. For coming to collect his daughter. For responding to your military provocations with remarkable restraint? He's a hostile. His warriors have been raiding. Have they? Where's your proof, Colonel? Show me one burned building, one dead settler, one stolen horse from the past week. Blake sputters, but he can't answer, because the truth is Nalnish's warriors haven't harmed a single soul. They've simply made their presence known. Your Honor, Ayanna says, stepping forward with the leather pouch in her hands. The proof of Colonel Blake's crimes is right here. Photographs of his men dumping poison into sacred springs. Written confessions from soldiers who were ordered to destroy burial sites. Orders signed by Blake himself, authorizing the theft of Apache children for forced relocation. Judge Hawthorne takes the pouch with hands that shake slightly, not from fear but from anger. As he examines the contents, his face grows darker and darker. Colonel Blake, he says finally, you're under arrest for violations of federal treaty law, crimes against humanity, and conduct unbecoming an officer. You can't arrest me. I'm conducting authorized military operations. Authorized by whom? Because I've got a telegram from Washington right here in my pocket, and it specifically forbids any military action in this territory without territorial judicial oversight. Blake's face goes white. He knows he's been caught and he knows his career is over, but men like Blake don't go down quietly. Sergeant Morrison, he barks to his second in command. Arrest Judge Hawthorne for interfering with military operations. For a moment, nobody moves. The soldiers look at each other uncertainly. They signed up to fight Apache warriors, not to arrest federal judges and massacre families. Then Sergeant Morrison does something that restores your faith in human decency. He steps forward, removes his hat and says, I'm sorry, Colonel, but I can't follow that order. Judge Hawthorne is a duly appointed federal official, and I took an oath to uphold the Constitution. One by one, the other soldiers lower their rifles. They're good men, most of them, who joined the army to serve their country, not to commit war crimes for an ambitious colonel. Blake realizes he's lost. His authority, his command, his grand plans for military glory, all of it crumbling like a house of cards. This isn't over, he snarls. The Apache are still a threat to territorial security. Mark my words, Judge, you'll regret this day. "The only thing I regret," Hawthorne replies calmly, "is that it took this long to stop you." As Blake is led away in chains, the tension in the valley begins to ease. Apache warriors start climbing down from their positions. Soldiers begin breaking camp. The crisis is over. But for Everett and Ayanna, the hardest part is just beginning. Subscribe to Frontier Hearts for more incredible tales from the American West, and let me know, do you think justice was served? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The afternoon sun casts long shadows across the McAllister Ranch as Chief Nalnish and his daughter sit together on the front porch, speaking quietly in Apache. Everett watches from a respectful distance, knowing that this conversation will determine not just Ayanna's future, but possibly the future of peace between their peoples. Judge Hawthorne has taken Colonel Blake and his remaining supporters back to Prescott for trial. The federal soldiers, now under Sergeant Morrison's temporary command, are preparing to return to their regular duties. The crisis has passed, but the questions remain. What happens now? Where does everyone go from here? "Father," Ayanna says, switching to English so Everett can understand, "this man saved my life, not just from the cold, but from Blake's men. He protected me when he had every reason to turn me away." Nalnish studies Everett with dark eyes that seem to see straight through to a man's soul. "Why?" he asks simply. It's the same question Ayanna asked when she first woke up in his house, and Everett gives the same answer he gave then. "Because I know what it's like to lose someone you love. I couldn't live with myself if I let that happen to someone else. You risked everything for a stranger. She stopped being a stranger the moment I decided to help her." Nalnish nods slowly. In Apache culture, actions speak louder than words, and Everett's actions have spoken volumes. "My daughter tells me you lost your family to sickness 5 years ago. Fever took them both in the space of a week. The pain of losing a child." Nalnish's voice trails off. He knows that particular agony better than most. "It changes you," Everett says simply. "Makes you see what really matters." The two men sit in comfortable silence for a while, watching the Apache warriors gather their horses and prepare for the journey home. These are proud people, Everett realizes, fierce when they need to be, but capable of great gentleness and wisdom. "Mr. McAllister," Nalnish says finally, "my people have a saying, the man who saves one life saves the world. You have saved more than my daughter's life. You prevented a war that would have killed hundreds of innocent people. I just did what felt right. That is precisely why you did the right thing." Nalnish reaches into his shirt and pulls out a silver medallion, similar to the one Ayanna wears, but larger and more intricately decorated. "This belonged to my father, and his father before him. It marks the bearer as a friend to our people, a protector who can travel safely in Apache lands." He places the medallion in Everett's hands. The silver is warm from Nalnish's body heat and polished smooth by generations of handling. "I can't accept this," Everett protests. "It's too valuable. Value is determined by what something means, not what it costs. This means you are family." The word hits Everett like a physical blow. Family. He hasn't been part of a family since Anna and Timothy died. He'd forgotten what it felt like to belong somewhere, to someone. Ayanna stands up, her face a mixture of joy and sorrow. "I have to go home with my father. My people need to know that peace is possible." "I know," Everett says quietly, "but I'll come back if you want me to. This will always be your home too." As the Apache prepare to leave, Sheriff Bradley rides up with news from town. "Everett, thought you should know, folks in White Mesa are calling you a hero. Word got around about how you stood up to Blake, protected an innocent girl from his bullying. Even the people who were scared before are saying you did the right thing. And the ones who still think I was wrong. There's always going to be some of those, but they're in the minority now." After the Apache riders disappear into the eastern mountains, Everett finds himself alone on his porch for the first time in 2 weeks. The silence should feel familiar. He's been living in silence for 5 years, but somehow it feels different now. Not empty, just quiet. Maria brings him a cup of coffee and sits down beside him. "Senor Everett, she'll be back." "You think so?" "I know so. That girl, she looks at you like you hung the moon, and you smile when she's around. First time I've seen you really smile since Miss Anna died." That evening, Everett walks through his house, seeing it with new eyes. The guest room where Ayanna stayed still smells faintly of the wildflower soap Maria gave her. The kitchen table where they shared so many meals. The living room where she listened to him read Shakespeare and ask questions that made him think about stories in new ways. For 5 years, this house has been a tomb where he came to remember the dead. Now for the first time it feels like a home where the living might want to stay. He finds himself at his desk, pulling out paper and pen. There's a letter he needs to write, not to Ayanna, but to his sister back in St. Louis, a sister he hasn't spoken to since the funeral, who's been begging him to visit, to start living again instead of just existing. "Dear Margaret," he writes, "I know it's been too long since my last letter, but I wanted you to know that something wonderful has happened. I've remembered how to hope again. Do you think Ayanna will keep her promise to return? And what do you think the future holds for Everett? Let me know in the comments below." Winter settles over the Arizona territory like a heavy blanket, and Everett McAllister finds himself changed in ways he's still trying to understand. The ranch runs smoothly under his hands, but his heart keeps drifting eastward toward the mountains where Chief Nalnish's people make their winter camp. 3 months have passed since Ayanna left. 3 months of wondering if she's safe, if she's happy, if she thinks about their conversations by the fireplace on cold evenings. He tells himself he's being foolish. She's a young woman with her whole life ahead of her, and he's a middle-aged widower still carrying scars from old grief. But love don't ask permission before it settles into a man's heart, and Everett's beginning to realize that what he feels for Ayanna goes deeper than simple affection or protective instincts. News trickles in from the outside world. Colonel Blake has been court-martialed and sentenced to 5 years in military prison. Judge Hawthorne has been appointed as the new territorial administrator for Native American affairs, and he's already begun implementing new policies based on Ayanna's evidence. Sacred sites are being protected. Water rights are being respected. For the first time in decades, there's real hope for lasting peace between the Apache and the white settlers. But personal peace, that's harder to come by. Sheriff Bradley visits regularly, bringing news from town and checking on Everett's state of mind. "You're looking better," he says one snowy afternoon. "Still thin as a rail, but your eyes don't look so haunted anymore." "I'm sleeping better," Everett admits. "Fewer nightmares about Anna and Timothy." "That's good, that's real good." Tom pauses, choosing his words carefully. "You know, there's been talk in town about you and that Apache girl." "What kind of talk?" "The good kind, mostly. People saying how brave she was, how smart, how she helped prevent a war, and how you two seemed to, well, care for each other." Everett stares out at the snow-covered mountains. "She's half my age, Tom. Different culture, different world. What kind of future could we have? The kind you make for yourselves, I reckon. Age ain't nothing but numbers on a calendar, and love don't much care about cultural differences." That night, alone by his fireplace, Everett reads through the journal he's been keeping. Entries about daily life on the ranch, thoughts about the changing territorial politics, memories of conversations with Ayanna. Reading his own words, he can see how much he's changed over the past few months. The man who rescued a freezing girl from the forest was running from life, hiding from pain, existing rather than living. The man sitting by the fire tonight is different, still scarred, still carrying grief, but no longer defined by it. Spring arrives early that year, and with it comes a visitor Everett never expected to see again. Ayanna rides up to the ranch house on a painted pony, looking older somehow, more confident. She's wearing traditional Apache dress, but carries herself with the bearing of someone who's bridged 2 worlds and found her place in both. "You came back," Everett says, hardly daring to believe his eyes. "I promised I would." They stand there for a moment, drinking in the sight of each other. She's even more beautiful than he remembered, but it's the intelligence in her dark eyes that takes his breath away. "How are your people?" "Healing, learning to trust again. My father has been meeting with other chiefs, sharing what we learned about building bridges instead of walls." She smiles. "He speaks of you often, calls you the white man who sees with Apache eyes." "And you? What do you call me?" "Home." The word hangs in the air between them, heavy with meaning and possibility. "Ayanna, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." "Always." "Are you here because you feel obligated, because you think you owe me something? Because if that's the case..." She silences him by stepping closer, close enough that he can see the gold flecks in her dark eyes. "Everett McAllister, I am here because in all the months I've been away I have not spent a single day without thinking of you. I am here because when I close my eyes, I see your face. When I hear Shakespeare quoted, I remember your voice. When I see an act of kindness, I think of the man who risked everything to save a stranger. I'm not the same man I was when Anna died, but I'm not sure I'm ready to be someone new either. I'm not asking you to be someone new. I'm asking you to be yourself, the man who reads poetry by firelight, who treats his workers like family, who sees people's souls instead of their skin color." Before he can respond, she continues, "My father has given his blessing, if that matters to you. He says any man brave enough to face down 40 soldiers for his daughter's honor is brave enough to be trusted with her heart." "And what does your heart say?" that I love you, that I've never loved anyone else, that I want to build a life with you here on this ranch, raising children who belong to both worlds and are welcomed in both. Everett feels tears running down his cheeks, tears of joy, of relief, of gratitude for second chances he never thought he'd get. I love you too, he whispers, more than I thought I could ever love anything again. When they kiss, it tastes like coming home after a long, hard journey. That evening, they sit on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. Maria fusses over Ayana like she's a long-lost daughter, and the ranch hands tip their hats respectfully to the woman who helped bring peace to the territory. There's something I need to tell you, Ayana says as they watch the first stars appear. What's that? I've been working with Judge Hawthorne on a new school program, teaching Apache children to read and write English while also preserving our traditional stories and customs. He's offered me a position as the territorial coordinator for Native education. That's wonderful, you'll be perfect for it. The position is based here in White Mesa. I'd be traveling to different reservations and tribal lands, but this would be home base. Everett grins. Sounds like the perfect job for someone who wants to bridge two worlds. There's more. Judge Hawthorne wants to establish a model ranch program, teaching both Apache and white children modern farming and ranching techniques alongside traditional land management practices. He's asked if we'd be willing to host it here. We? If you'll have me as a partner. In business and in life. Everett looks out at his ranch, the land he's worked for 20 years, the home he shared with Anna and Timothy, the place where he nearly died of loneliness and grief. Now he can see it differently, not as a monument to the past, but as a foundation for the future. I can't think of anything I'd want more. As they sit together in the gathering darkness, Everett realizes that sometimes the greatest adventures begin not with leaving home, but with learning to see home through someone else's eyes. What do you think about Ayana and Everett's plans for the future? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Frontier Hearts for more stories of love and redemption in the Old West. The wedding takes place on a warm June morning, right there on the McAllister Ranch with the mountains standing witness and wildflowers blooming in every direction. It's not a big ceremony, just family and close friends, but it brings together two worlds in a way that would have been impossible just a year before. Chief Nulnish performs the Apache blessing, speaking in the ancient language about the joining of souls and the creation of new paths. Judge Hawthorne handles the legal ceremony, his voice carrying across the valley as he talks about love transcending all boundaries. Maria cries happy tears throughout the entire service. Sheriff Bradley serves as Everett's best man, grinning like a schoolboy. Even some of the former soldiers who served under the honest Sergeant Morrison come to pay their respects. Good men who are genuinely happy to see justice and love triumph over hatred and fear. But the most moving moment comes when Ayana speaks her vows, partly in English and partly in Apache, promising to honor both her heritage and her new family. Everett, she says, her voice clear and strong, you taught me that love is not about forgetting the past, but about having the courage to build a future. You saved me from the cold forest, but more importantly, you showed me that different peoples can live together in peace and respect. When Everett speaks his vows, his voice breaks with emotion. Ayana, you brought me back to life when I thought I was dead inside. You showed me that home isn't just a place, it's the people you choose to love and protect. I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of the trust your people have placed in me. The celebration continues long into the evening, with Apache drum songs mixing with fiddle music, traditional dances sharing the space with frontier reels. It's exactly the kind of cultural blending that terrified men like Colonel Blake, and exactly the kind of harmony that gives hope for the future. 3 months later, the McAllister Ranch Educational Institute holds its first classes. 15 children, 8 Apache, 7 white settlers, gather in the newly built schoolhouse to learn reading, writing, arithmetic, and land management from teachers who represent both traditions. Ayana teaches Apache history and traditional ecological knowledge. Everett handles the practical aspects of ranching and farming. Judge Hawthorne visits monthly to ensure the program meets territorial education standards. It's an experiment that could change the entire future of the American West. The children adapt faster than anyone expected. Young Tommy Morrison, Sergeant Morrison's boy, becomes best friends with Little Wolf, Chief Nulnish's nephew. Sarah Beth Cooper, daughter of a local farmer, learns to weave baskets from Mary Singing Bird, whose grandmother was a master craftswoman. But it's not all easy. Some white families refuse to send their children to a school that includes Apache students. Some Apache traditionalists worry that their children will lose their cultural identity by learning white customs. There are challenges and setbacks and moments when everyone wonders if they're trying to do the impossible. One evening, as Everett and Ayanna sit on their porch watching the children play together in the yard, she voices the worry that's been keeping her up at night. What if we're pushing too hard too fast? What if we're asking people to change more than they're ready for? You know what I think, Everett says, pulling her close. I think change happens one person at a time, one friendship at a time, one act of kindness at a time. We can't force people to see things differently, but we can show them what's possible. As if to prove his point, they watch Tommy Morrison teaching Little Wolf how to throw a lasso, while Mary Singing Bird shows Sarah Beth how to identify edible plants. The children don't see cultural differences, they just see friends sharing knowledge. That winter brings their first real test. A harsh blizzard traps everyone at the ranch for 3 weeks, and the mixed group of families, Apache and white, have to work together to survive. They share food, take turns standing watch, tell stories around the fire to keep spirits up. By the time the snow melts, something fundamental has changed. These aren't just neighbors tolerating each other anymore. They're a community, a real community where children play together and parents help each other, and everyone understands that they're stronger together than apart. The second year brings new challenges and new successes. More families want to join the program. Territorial officials come to study their methods. Newspaper reporters write articles about the Arizona experiment that reach readers as far away as New York and San Francisco. Everett and Ayanna face personal challenges too. She suffers 2 miscarriages before successfully carrying their first child to term, a daughter they name Anna Hope, honoring both Everett's past and their shared future. Little Anna has her mother's dark eyes and her father's stubborn chin, and she grows up speaking 3 languages, English, Apache, and the universal language of laughter. By the 3rd year, the ranch has become something neither Everett nor Ayanna originally envisioned. It's not just a school or a working ranch, it's a model for how different peoples can live together. Families from other territories send letters asking for advice on starting similar programs. Government officials cite their work in treaty negotiations with other tribes. But for Everett and Ayanna, the most important measure of success is much simpler. It's watching their daughter play with children from different backgrounds. It's seeing former enemies become friends. It's knowing that love really can triumph over fear, if people are brave enough to try. One evening, as they put little Anna to bed, she asks the question that children always ask, "Mama, Papa, tell me the story of how you met." Everett and Ayanna look at each other and smile. It's a story they've told many times, but it never gets old. "Well, little one," Ayanna begins, "it was a cold winter morning and your papa found me freezing in the forest. And I had no idea," Everett continues, "that saving one person's life was going to save my own." What do you think about the success of Everett and Ayanna's educational program? Do you believe such cooperation was possible in the Old West? Share your thoughts in the comments below. 5 years have passed since that cold morning when Everett found Ayanna in the forest, and the world has changed in ways both subtle and profound. The McAllister Ranch Educational Institute has expanded to include 47 students from 7 different tribes and a dozen white settlements. What started as an experiment has become a movement, but success brings its own challenges. Politicians from back east have started paying attention to the Arizona experiment, and not all of them like what they see. There's talk in Washington about federal intervention, about the need to maintain proper racial boundaries and prevent dangerous mixing of cultures. Closer to home, a new territorial governor has been appointed, Governor Marcus Whitfield, a man who makes Colonel Blake look like a moderate. Whitfield believes that the only good Indian policy is one that forces complete assimilation or removal, and he's been looking for an excuse to shut down their program. The excuse comes in the form of an incident that starts small but threatens to destroy everything they've built. It's a warm spring afternoon when 8-year-old Tommy Morrison comes running into the schoolhouse, his face streaked with tears and his shirt torn. Miss Ayanna, they took Little Wolf." Ayanna drops the chalk she's been using to work arithmetic problems on the blackboard. "Who took him? What happened?" "Men on horses. They said he stole something from the general store, but he didn't. We were together the whole time." Everett arrives just as Tommy finishes his story. His face is grim as granite. "How many men?" 4 or 5, they had badges. Said they were deputy marshals. But Ayanna knows better. Little Wolf is Chief Nalnish's nephew, one of the brightest students in their program, and a boy who wouldn't steal a penny if he was starving. This isn't about theft, it's about politics. They're trying to provoke us, she tells Everett as they saddle their horses, make us react with anger so they can say we're dangerous. Then we won't give them the satisfaction. We'll handle this legal and proper. But when they reach town, they find the situation is more serious than they thought. Little Wolf is being held not by local deputies, but by federal marshals sent by Governor Whitfield. The charge isn't petty theft, it's terrorism. Terrorism? Judge Hawthorne's voice rises with indignation when they find him at the courthouse. The boy is 8 years old. Age doesn't matter if he's been radicalized by subversive influences. Marshal Craig responds coldly. Governor Whitfield has evidence that the McAllister Institute is teaching anti-American sentiment and preparing Native children for future uprising. That's the biggest load of... Everett starts, but Ayanna puts a calming hand on his arm. What evidence? She asks quietly. Testimony from concerned citizens who've observed suspicious activities at your ranch. Secret meetings, military-style training, indoctrination in savage customs. Judge Hawthorne's face is red with anger. Marshal Craig, I've personally inspected that school dozens of times. The only suspicious activity is children learning to read and write. That's your opinion, Judge. Governor Whitfield sees things differently. The real truth comes out that evening when Sheriff Bradley visits the ranch with bad news and worse news. The bad news is that Whitfield's got federal backing for his investigation. The worst news is that he's planning to use Little Wolf as an example. If he can prove the boy was corrupted by savage influences, he can shut down your program and arrest both of you for sedition. On what grounds? Everett demands. He don't need grounds, he just needs public opinion. And after what happened up in Montana, the Montana incident, a genuine uprising that left 12 settlers dead, has the entire territory on edge. Whitfield is using that fear to justify increasingly harsh measures against any Native American who won't submit to complete government control. That night, Ayanna sits by little Anna's bedside watching their daughter sleep peacefully. At 3 years old, Anna doesn't understand the danger they're facing. She only knows that her Apache cousins and her white friends all love her equally, and that the world is a place where different peoples can live together in harmony. But that world is under attack. We could run, Everett says quietly as they sit together on the porch. Take Anna and head for California, start over somewhere else. And abandon Little Wolf? Abandon all the other children who depend on us? If we stay and fight, we might lose everything anyway. Ayanna is quiet for a long moment, listening to the night sounds of the desert. Somewhere out there, her father and his warriors are waiting to see what she and Everett will do. If they run, it proves Whitfield's point that their program was never legitimate. If they fight and lose, it could mean prison for both of them, and the end of everything they've worked to build. There's a third option, she says finally. What's that? We make them prove their case in front of the whole territory, force them to explain exactly what's so dangerous about children learning to read. It's a risky strategy, but it might be their only chance. If they can turn this into a public trial about the future of Indian policy in Arizona, they might be able to expose Whitfield's real agenda and save not just their program, but the broader cause of peaceful coexistence. The next morning, they ride into town to face whatever comes next. Little Wolf is still in jail, scared but defiant. Judge Hawthorne is preparing for the biggest legal fight of his career, and somewhere in the territorial capital, Governor Whitfield is sharpening his knives. The battle for the soul of the Arizona Territory is about to begin. Do you think Everett and Ayanna are making the right choice by staying to fight, or should they protect their family by running? Let me know what you think in the comments, and subscribe to Frontier Hearts for the thrilling conclusion of this story. The territorial courthouse in Prescott has never seen anything like it. Every seat is filled, with more people standing in the aisles and crowding around the windows outside. This isn't just a trial. It's a referendum on the future of race relations in the American West. Governor Marcus Whitfield sits in the front row like a man attending his own coronation. He's convinced that this trial will make his political career, proving to Washington that he's the kind of strong leader the territories need. Beside him sit his hand-picked prosecutors and a carefully selected jury of white businessmen and ranchers. On the other side of the courtroom, Everett and Ayanna sit with Judge Hawthorne, who's representing them despite the obvious conflict of interest. Chief Nalnish is there too, having ridden in with a small group of warriors as a show of peaceful support for his nephew. But the most important person in the room is Little Wolf himself. At 8 years old, he's facing charges that could send him to a federal reform school for the rest of his childhood, or worse. Your Honor, the prosecutor begins, standing before the packed courtroom, we are here today to address a clear and present danger to the peace and security of Arizona Territory. The defendants have established what they call an educational institute, but evidence will show it is actually a training ground for future Apache terrorism. A murmur runs through the crowd. Some nods of agreement, but also some skeptical looks from people who've seen the school's work firsthand. The prosecution will prove that Little Wolf, corrupted by anti-American indoctrination, committed theft as part of a planned pattern of escalating criminal behavior designed to destabilize territorial authority. Judge Morrison, no relation to Sergeant Morrison, bangs his gavel for order. He's a fair man but politically cautious, exactly the kind of judge Whitfield chose for this trial. How does the defense plead? Judge Hawthorne rises slowly. Not guilty, Your Honor, and we request that these charges be dismissed as politically motivated persecution of an innocent child. Noted and denied. Proceed with opening statements. What follows is 3 days of testimony that reveals more about territorial politics than about Little Wolf's alleged crimes. The prosecution calls witness after witness, disgruntled former employees, biased townspeople, federal officials with political axes to grind, all claiming that the McAllister Institute is a hotbed of anti-government sentiment. But their testimony falls apart under cross-examination. The stolen goods turn out to be a penny candy that the store owner gave to Little Wolf for helping sweep his front porch. The military training is actually traditional Apache games that teach children cooperation and respect for nature. The anti-American indoctrination consists of teaching children to read both English and Apache literature. On the third day, Judge Hawthorne calls his key witnesses. Tommy Morrison takes the stand first, his young voice clear and strong as he describes his friendship with Little Wolf. He's the smartest boy I know, Tommy says. He helped me with my arithmetic, and I helped him learn to rope cattle. He ain't never stolen nothing. He ain't never hurt nobody. Mary Singingbird follows, her testimony delivered in careful English learned at the Institute. She describes how the school has helped her understand both her Apache heritage and her place in the broader American community. But the most powerful testimony comes from Little Wolf himself. What did you learn at the McAllister Institute? Judge Hawthorne asks gently. I learned to read and write in 2 languages, the boy says.